Hello there. Today we've got a bit of a different video for you. My dad's birthday's coming up in a few weeks, so I figured I would build him a watch and might as well record it and make a video out of it. So first I start by putting on finger cuts. These protect the components you're working on from skin oils. I don't really think that there's too much of a difference with latex gloves. Actually, most of the time I tend to wear gloves, but I guess the finger cuts are nice because your hand doesn't get quite as sweaty. So once I get these on, I'll grab my movement that I'm basing the watch off of. So this is an NH35 movement. It's a Seiko movement and just an awesome base for any kind of watch mod or custom watch build. So I put that into a movement holder and then I'll start fitting the dial. So this dial is actually kind of the inspiration behind this build. I found this dial and thought it was very cool and reminded me a lot of my Hamilton khaki field, which I've really been enjoying wearing lately. So you see on the back of the dial here, there's two sets of posts, and this is so that these dials can fit a few different types of the Seiko movements. So you have to actually go ahead and cut off the legs that aren't needed for this particular movement. So I align the dial with the movement, see which two posts are redundant, and then use some wire snippers and cut them off. Now I can fit up the dial to the NH35 and it should just press fit right on, and it does. And then next is the fun part, which is putting on the hands. So I got some hands with some Fotina loom, so you can see the loom matches the loom on the dial, and both are this really nice tan color, which I really like. It gives it this sort of vintage style look. So first we start by putting on the hour hand. I use a little bit of Rodico to hold the hand in place while I use a hand setting tool to push it down onto the movement. And then I go under the microscope and check to make sure the hand is seated correctly and is nice and flat before I lay on the minute hand. So next I grab the minute hand with the Rodico, set it over the hour hand, try to get it all nice and aligned at 12 o'clock, and then I'll try to press this hand on. And it's definitely a tricky process, and setting hands definitely requires some patience, but for sure the Rodico helps a lot with getting the hand positioned where you want it before you really press it down. So once the minute hand's on, I'll do the same thing as I did with the hour and check to make sure it's lined the way I want to. Right now I see that the minute hand is a little bit angled down, so I need to go away and adjust that. Once I have that adjusted, I'll check for hand clearance, and then I'll move on to the second hand. The second hand's always the hardest part of any build for me. It's so difficult to get it to align and press right into that center. So really just have to get up close and personal. So my eye is, maybe 3 inches from the hand. And again, I use Rodico to hold the hand in place until I get it right lined up and then press it down with the hand tool. Then I go ahead and make sure that there's clearance. So I'll turn the watch through the full 12 hours to make sure there's no, hitting between the hour hand, the minute hand, the second hand. And then I can go ahead and get the watch started, let the second hand start ticking, see and make sure it doesn't have any kind of rubbing on the minute hand especially. Then I use a Rodico to remove the last little bits of dust, and then again go back under the microscope and check to make sure all the hands look nice and everything's running nice and smooth. So then I use a duster to make sure there's no dust on the dial, and then I'll set it into the case. So this case is a field watch style case. So then I go ahead and set it in, and then I need to make sure I get the stem aligned so that we can put in the stem and crown. And then the movement has to be pressed fully down into the case, which I now do just with my fingers. I'll then put in the stem. And this, if you have everything lined up correctly, should just pop right in. However, I was having some troubles, and I realized that the stem wasn't quite lined up, so I had to rotate the movement a little bit in the case with my tweezers, and then pop the stem in, and there we go, it goes right in. So then I make sure it engages each of the 3 crown positions, and then can go ahead and make sure everything's all lined up. Now the last step is to fit the case back, and so first I grab my O-ring to seal it, and I use this nice handy tool which allows me to lubricate the gasket to try to get the best water tightness. This case should be fairly watertight. I don't think it would be dive spec or anything, but should definitely keep the water out. while you're washing your hands, or even if you get pushed into a pool or have some light swimming. So I get the gasket seated, make sure everything's all ready to go, dust off. There's a little bit of dust left on the rotor, so I get that off with some Rodico, and then go ahead and set on the case back. I'll then twist it on by hand. Once I get it hand tight, then I can go ahead and use a case back tool to set into the little grooves that you see on the case back here and tighten it the rest of the way. And I don't go too tight, but you want a pretty nice, pretty firm tightness on it to make sure that you get the watch as waterproof as it can be. So once that's done, we flip the watch over, and here we go. Here's the finished product. So now I can go ahead and put on the spring bars, use a little spring bar tool to pop those in, and then I can go ahead and feed on a NATO strap. Again, using the Hamilton khaki field as my kind of inspiration or reference for this build, I wanted to go with the green NATO strap. I don't know if that's eventually what my dad will end up keeping, but I think it actually looks quite nice with the white face. And here we go. So now I got a couple shots under the microscope. For sure it's not the most optimal lens setup, but that's something that I'll have to continue to play with to find something that works a bit better. But here's a few macro shots of the watch. Now that everything's all packaged up and running nice, the next step is to go ahead and grab the watch and put it on a time grapher. This is a tool that lets you see the beat rate of the watch to see how accurate it is at keeping time. You can also see the amplitude of the movement itself and the beat error. And so everything looks well within specs there. And here we go. Here's the final product next to the Hamilton khaki field, which was the inspiration for the watch. I think it really looks nice, and actually I think I like the patina in the loom on this build a little bit better than my Hamilton. So thank you for watching. Hope you found it interesting, and happy birthday, Dad. Hope you enjoy the watch.